And also, being honest when you don't know something. Said, I don't really understand that. Can you tell me that one more time? I want to understand what you're saying. But if you don't do that, it's just not helpful for your growth. You're not learning things.
Welcome to the Leaders in Tech podcast, the best technology and leadership podcast in the internet. I am your host, David Mansala. This podcast has one primary focus: to acknowledge the leaders in technology that are changing this world for a better place. If you like to listen about specific technology advancements, this is not the place for you. This is the place where you come and learn how to grow your career in technology through leadership and to make a pathway for people that are ahead of you and behind you so that they can achieve their greatest potential while together making this world a better place. So today we have an amazing leader with us. Welcome, Tracy Allen.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm so grateful to be here.
It's a pleasure. Tracy, for the audience, as you know, I don't actually read your credentials. You are an amazing leader and super qualified person, but I like to get that from you. So can you give me your full name? Where do you live and what are you working at right now?
Yeah, sure. So my name's Tracy Allen and I'm located in Gatineau, Quebec, which is in Canada, not far away from our friends in Ottawa in the capital region. And I'm currently working at Nokia. I head up the procurement organization for IT globally. So that people, just to have people an idea how big Nokia is, how's the outreach for Nokia worldwide? So we're in all countries, right? We employ approximately 90-ish thousand people globally. So huge telecommunications company with lots of different cultures and lots of different people from different paths, and really grown from acquisition as well. So we've been through lots of acquisitions of different cultures. So a really great place to work.
Fantastic. Tracy, let's look back at your life, and I want to figure out what steps did you take in order to get where you are at right now? Because what you're doing is a global effort, and you have people all over the place, and you are providing that leadership that is really making a change. And the audience here, a lot of them are people that want to be eventually in a place where you are right now. So at the beginning, let's go back to high school. What was in your mind at your last year in high school? What do you want to do with your life?
Oh boy. My last year in high school. So I had been in French school actually my whole life. Right? Like I said, I lived in Quebec, and so we had to go to French school. So I went to French school until I was up in grade 9, and then I had this crave to switch into English. It's just easier. So I made that switch into English and finished in an English high school. And then in Quebec, we only got to grade 11, and then we go into Cégep, which is pre-university, kind of like a college before we go in. So I did that. And then I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I loved material management. That was like my passion. Material management. So working in a factory or project planning, how to get a project done and who are the owners and accountabilities. And I was working on that. So I ended up taking a college certification actually for 3 years on material management, which was really fun. So when I look back at high school, what was I thinking? I was just kind of going through the motions. I like to say that kind of life just happened to me, which is not really great. And I want to change that for other people. You should really drive your life, right? And make your, so, I was raised by baby boomers who obviously work, money were the two priorities for you to be successful. That was like you're the measurement of success, right? Is security. So that was really important that I went to school, but for not too long. Right? Just to get a job, right? So that was kind of like my mission. So I achieved that. I went to school and college, and I was working in the government as well. Because like I said, I'm right near the capital region, which is where the Canadian government employees, most of them are located. and I worked in the government, and I was in material management, but material management in the government is unfortunately it's asset management, which is desks and pencils, and I wasn't really like what I was envisioning for myself, right? So I was like, I don't know if I can do this. And so I ended up, convincing, I had a lot of discussions with my parents about going back to school. I decided to go back and got my university degree at 23. So I was almost like a grown-up going back to school. So that, it wasn't difficult, but it was challenging in the sense that, at that point, I should have probably had a full-time job, and I had one. I was offered one in the government, but I just didn't think it was the right role for me and where I wanted to end, and that's not where I wanted to be at that time. So I ended up going back to university, and it was tough with my parents to convince them that I wanted to go back and get a university degree, and I did that and got my business degree, and was that kid at 26, I guess, when I finished, saying, okay, let's go career fairs, we gotta get jobs because I'm older. So I organized that, and I'm super implicated in that and wanted to make sure that to help the other students find roles. So I ended up in Montreal, actually at Future Electronics, which is a electric component distributor, and that's where it all started in tech. So
wow, so you had a business degree and your first full-time job was in tech.
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
Regarding university, my grandfather, just so that you know how fast time goes by, right? So my grandma and my grandpa, they were born in the first decade of the 1900s. So 1910, within that time. So we're still riding horses, the car is brand new, right? That, just to give you an idea, right? So my grandfather, he wanted to become a civil engineer. Back then, people still live in farms. So he actually was on the farm. He went to the city and got his bachelor's degree. And then he went into engineering school. And in the middle, he decided to get married and he got kids. And he couldn't go to class anymore, so he had to get a job, right? So he was working on this mechanic shop for a long time. But in his heart, he was always had this idea that he wanted to have his degree completed. Out of necessity, he realized that he was good with numbers still, so he became a chartered accountant. Just to high school. Time went by, and then when he was 40 years old, he finally went back to university and completed his degree. And that degree allowed him to work from he was about 45 years old until he was 84 when he died with that profession. So for the people that are thinking that 23 is too old to go back to school, it's not.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Well, I wouldn't change it for the world. I think it was the right decision for me. But at the time, looking at my peers and, the friends that I was going to school, I was the oldest one, right? So I was always hanging out with the last year kids. And I was always losing my friends and starting all over every year to do that, right? But it was the right decision for me. And I wouldn't change that. But it was not an easy thing, I think, when I look in hindsight of the discussions with my parents and just having that, I should have been farther ahead, but I knew in my heart, when you say you follow your intuition, you follow your heart, I knew it wasn't the right thing for me to stop there. So always listen to your intuition, right? That's a really...
For sure. And and that's another thing, I know we have to make choices in life. At the end of the day, though, there is a part that we don't control. And now that I'm older, I think that part is bigger than I thought. But you still have to do your effort. You have to be strong and courageous and do what you think is best for you. And if it doesn't work out, find something else until you find something that works out. It's as simple as that, but we make it complicated, isn't it?
We do.
So what was your role, your first junior job at this electronics company? What was your role?
It was called a business analyst, which was an interesting role. It was fun. I was working for the VP of a Future Active division, which is the smaller division inside Future. And basically I was tasked to go to the North American office's sales office and to kind of meet the sales people, making sure they're profiling their customers, making sure that things were going well in the office, and just kind of the way I kind of explain it is kind of like being the eyes and ears of the big company making sure everything's working well, right? So, but it's a big distribution company. And so I learned a lot. I was only there for maybe a year because I ended up moving back home when one of my friends at Newbridge, which is was a small company in Ottawa, which was Terry Matthews' company, Newbridge. They did ATM switches, and they needed a procurement person at Newbridge. So she was my old roommate from school and said, do you want to come back to Ottawa? And I was like, because I was in Montreal, and I was like, sure, is there a job? Yeah, we need a contract analyst. I'm like, okay. So I went there, and that's how I kind of started like in procurement, I would say. So I was like 28 maybe, something like that.
And what would you do for them, like specifically?
So we had our own factory, and so we would buy all of our electronic components for the factory. So we had to do all the forecasting for our VP or CPO to negotiate all the pricing. So we had to like understand, and back then the tools were kind of limited, the ERP systems, but we had to blow out spreadsheets of like how many millions of pieces we need of this part, and like how many passive components you were using, right? Like hundreds on a card and multiples of, thousands. So it was fun. It was like just basically coming up with the forecast at the top level, you knew what you needed to build for the year based on what the sales guys would give you, right? And then you had to blow out all the bombs to be able to come up with the numbers that you needed to negotiate for the year. So that's basically where I really kind of started in procurement.
Isn't that amazing that you were using your first degree and your second degree?
Exactly. Yeah. And then it just kind of built from there. We were really lucky because we had our own factory down the road. That gave me that chance to go into the factories because I loved that. I just loved seeing something come in as something and see it leave something completely different. It was like, wow, and I just had this thing. I just loved being there, and I loved looking at the machinery and seeing all the transformations it would make, So I really enjoyed that. And then, so with that, we had to buy parts for the factory. So after I did my contract analyst role, I moved into a buying role because I really knew I wanted to be in leadership, but I also believed that I needed to do these roles to really have an appreciation for the people, right? So that I could actually speak the language and understand the pains and the challenges and the pluses of doing these kinds of roles. So for me, it was like, I want to touch it, do it, and then I'm just going to make my way to those leadership roles, but I want to have, stuff in my bag. Experience, like real experience, not just, leadership experience, like to say, I can lead, but I wanted to be able to understand and really kind of bring value so that I can help my people when I'm actually in that position, right? Where I can roll up my sleeves and get down and dirty and solve problems with them. So that was kind of like something that I knew early on that I wanted to do. So for me, it was important that I kept trying different roles in procurement to develop myself.
And so when you got this buyer role, was it the same company?
I've been there my whole life.
Wow.
Because we were acquired by so many. So I was at Newbridge as a buyer and NPI buyer, so working with the engineers to select their components so that, I could start the pipeline going so that they could deploy their product on time to the market. And so I was like a very front end job. I did that for a long time. And then we were also bought by Alcatel, which is a French company, telecommunication company. And then we merged with Lucent. And we kind of
you were part of Lucent.
Yeah, well, we merged with Lucent, Alcatel Lucent, and then we got bought by Nokia. So it's been but I've been with the same company, really, at the end of the day, for 25 years now.
You know how hard that is to make in these days? You must be exceptional because with every merger and acquisition, most people lose their job, right? And they have to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
I was in a senior role for working for Bell Canada. Actually, I was going to Montreal every 2-3 weeks back in 1999, 2000. And back then I was heading they created a new company called BDI. And I was heading the new point of sale systems for all the stores across Canada. So we were building that. So I was in charge of the whole thing. And one day I remember we were coming and they let go 500 people of that new phone company. We were 1,000 people, 500 people were let go in one day. None of my staff got affected because our project was mission critical, and thank God we deployed and we were very successful. But like for somebody to be, even though you had merged so many times in the same kind of company, which is not the same anymore, right? It's incredible. That speaks to your ability and to grow and also to change as everything changes, right?
Mm-hmm.
What was your first impact, like with your first merger, and how do you overcome that?
Yeah, so our first one would have been with Alcatel. It was a French company. So it was interesting. It was a long time ago now I think back about it. But it was exciting because we were a really small company. So this was a much bigger company. So it was kind of exciting for people, right? But yeah, there was a lot of change, right? Because culturally it was different. And there was obviously some reductions and restructuring. I remember that as well. We also closed our factory. So like things changed dramatically, right?
Right.
But you needed to learn. That was like, for me, the biggest impact there was to learn to work globally. Right? Our headquarters was now no longer in Ottawa, but in Paris. But again, I spoke French, so I thought like, oh, I can do this, right? Like I speak French at least, but no, I speak Quebec French, so it's not the same. So my Parisian friends didn't really appreciate French, but it was okay. But I could understand them and they could understand me. But really being able to work in a global organization, I think was the biggest change for me personally, but also the hugest learning and impact for me, because that became so important after that. Doing business with telecommunication companies today are quite global in nature, right? The outreach is huge. We play in all markets, all countries. So it's an important piece, right? And that kind of helped me all along the way to be able to work globally, because it was, even with Nokia, it's quite global. So you need to be able to have people, lead people, but also work with people all across different cultures and in different time zones. And so, yeah, it requires an adjustment in terms of how your day might look, let's say.
It's a different mindset, when I really learned how to manage remote people is after going to Bell, I got headhunted out by Sun Life. But it was in Sun Life. Before Sun Life, it was called Mutual Life. And they did a huge buyout. And from there, I went to another job, the largest laboratory in Canada. They had presence all over the country. And we're talking 2003, 2004. Mm-hmm. And that's where I really learned how to manage remote people, because I had developers from coast to coast. Mm-hmm. And for people that don't know how wide Canada is, if you look at the American continent from Canada all the way to Argentina, in the middle, after Mexico, you have Guatemala, okay? It takes longer to go from Toronto to Vancouver than from Toronto to Guatemala. It's longer, it's bigger. And to your point is, you have to think globally if you want. Now my company hires people in 9 countries, mostly Latin America, but now we have people in Philippines too. And the cultures are so different. And we've been blessed because I've been doing, since I started my company in 2005, I had a global mindset. And we kept growing as everything grew, as people realized that remote work was the thing. For me, COVID didn't do anything because I've been remote with my employees since 2005. The only one that had a head office was myself, because I couldn't work from home myself. So I know the older people will go to the head office, right? Yeah. So did your role change when you were acquired by this French company?
Nope, it didn't change, but a few years later then I changed again into more of a category role, like managing and negotiating supplier governance, supplier management, and so forth. So I did change after that, and then went back to what I really love to do, but as a leader, in terms of working with the engineers up front, in terms of designing in their products, and became a leader in the IP part of the business. And then we merged the optic piece of that, and then I was responsible for the optics and the IP piece from procurement standpoint.
Is that for human resources part or from buying still, from purchase?
Always
procurement. Mm-hmm. How do you land those roles in these bigger organizations?
How do I what?
How did you change the roles? How did you were able to scale up? How did you do that?
Yeah. So I think, one of the things that really important for me in terms of my success was actually really making an effort to build strong relationships, and trusting relationships with people around me, my customers, my stakeholders, but also with my mentors, right? So I always, and one thing that I always kind of go back to, and I think is probably a really important part of my success, is actually tapping into those and making sure that I nurture those relationships, time building them, and really have a strong foundation. Because I do think that mentorship, it's an overused word, I would say, today, but it is a really important piece of your success in terms of career growth. Nobody's going to hold a mirror to you like a mentor could, right? If somebody do their job well, is really to kind of show you where you shine, right? Because sometimes we're not really great at seeing ourselves in terms of where we have our superpowers, right? So having somebody who can reflect that back to you and say, this is what you're really good at. Here are the areas you need to improve as well, right? Comes with that. And really kind of being that person that, is giving you that visibility and really kind of talking about you positively in the leadership ranks to say, it's her turn, right? She's amazing at this. She's great at that. That for me, that's like what mentorship looks like, right? Is really kind of helping others see where they have strengths and where they need to do some work, but also being their champion, right? And helping them get visibility inside the company, or get them airtime in certain meetings, or putting them in front of the right people so that people can see who they really are and how great they are. So for me, that was like probably the most important, impactful thing that I really invested in. And I didn't do it because I knew it was important. I did it because it's the only thing I knew that I could get external feedback to get support, to know where I'm at, right? That's how you start building confidence. When people are telling you what you are doing well, this is what you're not doing so well. Mm-hmm. How can I help you? And how can I, they're going to lean in and try to help you and support you. That's all I knew that's all I had, right? I could go back to school and so forth, but that's not what I needed. I needed somebody to tell me, in this job, in this role, what we need in this company, what does that look like? And that for me was probably the most important thing. As well as obviously creating a network, I would say, is another piece, right? Which is making sure that you're nurturing that network and that you're being very clear on what you're looking for, and being vulnerable in situations where, if you don't know something and somebody can help you, taking those opportunities to do that is really, really important. And that's one thing I would say that it was important to me, and part of the success for me was obviously mentoring, having mentors, having coaches around me, also having a good network that was built on trust, and obviously, being clear on what I'm looking for, because people don't know what you want. Mm-hmm. Minds, it's like, well, I'm working really hard. Do you not see me over here? No, we don't. We're heading. You need to say what you want, right? So holding space for yourself and saying, this is what I need. This is what I'm looking for. And also, being honest when you don't know something. I'm in procurement. I work with engineers my whole life. I always said, I don't really understand that. Can you tell me that one more time? I want to understand what you're saying. But if you don't do that, it's just not helpful for your growth. You're not learning things. Saying that you don't know, pretending you know something when you don't, is not going to get you where you want to get to, right? Because that means there's an opportunity for growth there that you're missing out on.
And not being afraid to ask. And people that are afraid to ask, they think they're making a service to the other person, but it's actually a disservice, because if you don't ask, your job is not going to be performed properly, which is going to impact other people and eventually your business. And eventually you could lose your job. But if you're not afraid to ask because you have to deliver over and above what is expected of you, mm-hmm. and you have that boldness, but I think it also requires humility, isn't it? It requires being humble enough to say, I don't know, or I don't get it. Can you please repeat it again?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's one of the things that I've done all my life ever since I was in university. It's funny because I excel at software development. Like I was a very good computer programmer. But when it came to math and other areas, even though I enjoyed them a lot, it was hard for me. So I will be in my network. I build a network of very smart people, and I will ask my friends everything that I didn't understand. And at the end, I ended up getting better marks than they did.
Right. That's the power, right? That's the power. Able to like be vulnerable and ask those questions. Like I said, it's an opportunity for growth. If we miss that, then we're losing.
Yeah. And another thing that you mentioned that is profound wisdom, build a network. It requires a team to be successful, especially in a company with, thousands and thousands of people like yours. I truly believe that your net worth is represented by your network. Right?
Yeah.
So it's important to do it on purpose, right?
Yeah, and I know it's like even in my own team, it's like an investment for them, right? I see it in people that are not necessarily think it's just time. It takes time. I get it, but it's well worth the time spent. It's an investment. It's an investment in others, but it's also an investment in you, because I always believe that a network and allies it's a two-way street. I'm supporting them and they're supporting me. It's not just like I just need something from them. It's actually we are feeding each other and supporting each other, right? And it's built on trust. But if you don't have that, it's really, really tough, right? Really, really tough to make those changes, to get the support you need to make those changes, to get your voice heard, and for others to represent you the way that you deserve to be represented, right? For what you're known for. So if you're a well-kept secret, guess what? You don't get discovered, right?
Yeah.
That's at the end of the day what happens. So I think it's fundamental for people to invest in that. It does take time, but it's a good investment of time.
For sure. And as you were growing in your career, I bet you must have had a lot of roadblocks just by being a female in technology. That's very rare. And when I find people like you, I my admiration goes multiple times, because it's not easy, right? To give you an idea, when I went into computer science, we were like 400 people in my promotion, maybe 10 ladies, right?
Mm-hmm.
So did you ever expect any difficulty just because you were a female in technology?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it was my own challenges, right? It was, a lot of women, and I don't even say women because I do talk sometimes to students in tech, and after I'm done, we have chats, and a lot of them, even men, have imposter syndrome, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is like something that, it's not anybody else creating on me, it's myself, it's my mindset, right? It's where I'm thinking I'm less than other people. And when you're with engineers a lot, obviously, just naturally, you might think you're just not as smart as them because, they're the center of the company, I always say, and the heartbeat of the company, because they're creating and innovating and productizing, and, that's where the revenue comes. But it took me a long time to and that's why that mirror piece is really important. Having somebody to reflect back to you on where your sweet spots are and what your superpowers are. That's when you can start building some confidence. Okay, why am I here? Well, I'm here because I complement these engineers. The things that I do are different than what they do. They're here to design product and innovate. They don't really want to negotiate with suppliers and be tough and play the bad cop and hound people and sit with meetings with suppliers. Actually, that's where I build lots of relationships. That's what I'm good at. And that's where, I love negotiating. I love to have conversations around what's a fair win-win for everybody. And so they didn't want to do any of that stuff. That was so I'm like, when somebody pointed that back to me, you have a role here that's, your skill set are required for us to be successful at the end of the day. We need to ship product that's maximizing margin for the company so we can make money.
Yeah.
That can't be done alone with an engineer. That's where you come in, and this is all the skills that you have that will help us. But for me, not having those mentors to reflect back to me what they needed and what they see in me, I probably would have been always stuck in that pattern of feeling lesser and lesser than them.
Yeah.
And over time, by building that and seeing myself over time, right, and getting a mindset coach to help me see that, I've just finally kind of seen the value I can bring to the organization, and that, hey, guess what? I don't need to be an engineer. That's not what I'm here for.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that women, in tech or in any industry, right? I think what we're seeing now, and what I see anyway, as we continue to move through this period with, in tech, is that we need to get to the human skills, right? And human-based centric leadership, which is what I really believe in, which is we really need to start acting and, really supporting our people. They are the center of the company. We say that all the time, but do we act in that way is the question. And that I need to get to, because I truly believe that, people, will not, the next generation kids will not work for fear-based leadership. That's not how we have, mothered our children, right? And we've been, motivating them, encouraging them. That's how this whole, mother, like the parenting has changed, even if you look back, right? Since our parents. So we have to prepare. The kids are not going to come into this workplace and want to work for people that are going to be yelling and screaming at them and because they're not delivering. So how are we going to do that for them, right? And I think that we need to get back. At the end of the day, we're all humans, right? We know how we want to be treated, and we should be putting that back onto our people. And that is something that I've been super passionate about the last few years. And it really comes down to leadership. And I think that more and more, as we continue to evolve and the next generation kids are coming through, we're going to need to embrace that. And I think that's where women have a huge possibility and a lot of potential, because we have that nurturing, we have that motherhood makeup, right? Where we're here to be our children, we're nurturing, caring, empathetic, intuitive, all these magical superpowers we have, which is what our people are looking for now.
Yeah.
So I think women are set up perfectly to get in there. It's not that men can't do it. It's got nothing to do with that. I'm just saying we're now leveling up where we have that skills that are going to be required for success in leadership. And I think that's going to be a great revelation if we can make it happen. We're still nowhere in terms of women in leadership, right? Like when we talk about numbers, right? I think Fortune 500, less than 10% are women leaders, right? CEOs. We have a lot of work to do. So,
but look at it 40 years ago, 50 years ago.
Yeah.
It's changing rapidly.
It's changing, but I think they say it's like another 100 years before we even see it balance out. Like there's so much work to be done, right? It takes a long time. But I think I'm inspired, and I think that we're on the right trajectory where women have a lot of the qualities that we're going to need for great leadership in the future. And I want women to see that and hold on to that as they continue to grow and develop themselves, right? Is to kind of look at what they can bring that's different from other people, right? And that's what makes a great leadership team, right? Is like that diversity again, if we talk about it.
And it's through only through leaders like you that we're able to get to the top. So now you can just pass it forward to the next generation and build these amazing leaders that eventually will succeed you, right? So you start seeing the change. Like the world environment right now is so different, especially, I still was brought up in a dictatorial type enterprise, like when I was even in the 90s, it was completely different from what it is now. Before we had managers and few leaders. Now you can see more and more leaders. And that's why I built this podcast, because being a leader is not the same as being a manager. You want to inspire people. You want to get people to get so excited on Monday morning to go to work, right? Because at the end of the day, you spend most of your awakened time at work. So that if you are going to have a horrible time, your life becomes miserable, right? And that's up to the leaders to get that work environment. Don't get me wrong, we have to work hard and we have to, be strong and courageous, but we can make it in such a way that is fulfilling.
Yes, and I think that there is lots of data and facts that show that you don't have to have a fear-based leadership to get better results than what we have. Imagine if people are delivering with that kind of leadership, what they could deliver if they were inspired, right?
Yeah.
And they wanted to be there and they wanted to do 150% every day for you.
Yep.
The engagement that comes with that, right? It's got to be better than what we have.
Well, last time I checked, it was 33% engagement in corporate North America. 33%.
That's horrible.
Right?
Well,
But it's up to the leaders to change it, right? And we have to learn from each other, from mentors like you, right?
yeah, we absolutely need to do something different, right? And that's where that human-centric leadership is super important. And I've been, doing a lot of competence development in our company, and a lot of it is around mindset work. And, being able to give people the right strategies to set them up for success. And you see the engagement because people have been invested. They've been invested in by the company. We're paying for them to develop. That changes the whole dynamic, right? It's like, you care about me. That's what people want to hear, is that we care about them.
Yeah. A number on a spreadsheet, right?
Yeah. So there's so much to gain in that space. And I think that, yes, it costs money to invest in our people, but the investment, the return on investment is massive.
Mm-hmm.
Have a highly engaged workforce that wants to be there with a low attrition. That is return on investment that, it's huge in terms of shareholders.
Well, yesterday I was interviewing the senior VP for learning and professional development for General Electric. He's got 30,000 people under him. And he says his metrics, right? He's been doing that for a while now, and his metrics proves that they're making billions of dollars in profits by investing in their people, in their professional development, in their mindset. The battlefield is in the mind. Everything is here.
Absolutely.
Right?
For that. Yeah, absolutely. And that's where, if you can bring that into corporations and that kind of development, it massively changes people's lives. Like, I've had people come back to me and say, I'm a better father now. I'm a better husband. I'm a better leader because I now understand myself. And now I've reframed some of my mindset or my belief systems that aren't serving me anymore because they've been, given to me when I was 7 years old, and it does not work for me anymore. It was my parents, not that they did anything wrong, but it changed the way I think of situations. And now I've unblocked that, unpacked that, and got to realize what the reality is, what's the truth in what's happening. And it's changed the way they see the world, right? I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah, so important. And I'm so into that, for sure. Tracy, thank you so much for your time. I really want to respect it. This podcast is your home. You can always come back. I am so blessed to have you with us. One last question before we finish the podcast. If you had access to a billboard in front of the busiest highway on earth, what would you write in it?
Oh my God, that's a great question. I would say that, it would need to be, I don't know the exact words of it, I need to think about it, but it would be, the message needs to be around helping others, right? To show up in the best version of themselves. And a real leader will help others surpass them, right? That's what I would want it to be, something or with that message.
I can actually see the billboard. A real leader is the one that helps others surpass them.
Yeah.
If we keep doing that, the world will change.
Absolutely.
Think about it.
Fascinating. I can't wait for that.
Tracy, thank you so much. If people would like to get in touch with you, maybe to ask you questions on their career advancement, where can they find you?
I'm more active on LinkedIn, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Probably the best place to find me. Instagram, I'm not super active, so stick with LinkedIn. I think probably the place, yeah.
Same with me. The only thing that I use these days is LinkedIn. All the other social media, not too much.
Yeah.
Tracy, thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of the week and keep changing the world for a better place. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, David, for having me. I'm super grateful to be here.
Blessings.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to the Leaders in Tech podcast. Check in next week to keep learning how to use technology and leadership to change the game. See you next time.